We're ready. Yep.
Read the opening remarks. I would much
Oh, one.
appreciate it.
Okay. It
Do we have to read the
is.
opening remarks for a meeting like this? Is that we have to go through the whole Mish McGiggy?
Well, let's not do it differently today. We can ask
Okay,
that
right.
question
All right.
to the attorney and to people and see if that's something we need to do.
Okay.
But maybe today's not the right day to not do it. Um,
Good point.
we did get rid of some opening ceremonies. That should make you happy.
Right.
Um,
For a
so,
few minutes.
um, It is now 4:02 on June 8th, 2026. This is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County, all one word. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or file a complaint, please contact Christina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams. All of that information is available at capecod.gov. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now we'll call this meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. Now a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Frizel,
Here.
Delegate Gallagher,
Here.
Vice Chair Killian,
Here.
Delegate O'Malley,
Here.
Chair Oman.
Here.
I do see one of your alternates, Delegate King. You are here, right?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm
And
here.
and
here.
Delegate Fuller, I believe, will not be joining us today. So you have a full deck and one alternate as well, Mr. Chair. Ready to go.
Well, as you saw in the, it's a wide-ranging discussion next, and really we have to think about the future of Barnstable County government, and that's why we started this. And Owen has put a summary together that I think is excellent, and then we can start with that. I hope you've all had a chance to peruse it, and I'll just read the first sentence. Members of the Assembly Delegate Standing Committee on Finance and Full Assembly have raised the ongoing concerns on the FY 2026 and FY 2027 budget review cycles regarding the Cape Cod Regional Government's 10-year fiscal forecast and long-range operating plan. So going on from that, I'd like to entertain some ideas of what we can do or what we should be aiming at with. Specifically, I think we'll start with the 2027 budget. We decided as a finance committee to look into it now before it just gets rumbled over us, in December. And I think that. Oh, and I want to say that I'm really happy that Vera Herrick is here too, because she's always a fountain of information from the administration side. So what we're trying to do is look at what we can do to manage or try to manage the expense side of the fiscal 2027 budget, and also can we somehow change our revenue sources so that too can help keep our budget balance going into the future. So I'm willing to listen to anyone else but me.
Well, just a point of information there, Mr. Chair. I think
Yeah.
when we kept mentioning FY 27, I think you mean FY 28, right?
Oh,
Because we've
FY
already
28,
approved.
yeah.
Yeah,
We
so
already
we're
had-
looking
yeah.
at the budget to come.
Yes,
Yeah.
FY
Okay.
28 is exactly what I meant. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
I would venture the simple perspective. I'm sorry, Carl. You got your hand up first. Go ahead.
That's okay. Well, I just was going to try to tee it up a little bit and put a couple of things on the table. I know we all have ideas about this. But, the things we really focused on, especially on the expense side, is what we call the leading to a structural imbalance. and putting us in a structural deficit. And we looked at the long-range forecast for expenses and revenues, and starting in FY28, where a seven-figure deficit is projected. And we know that over 72% of our expenses are for salaries, wages, and fringe benefits. And one of the things we focus on is the way in which we have these steps, then merit, then cost of living. And you add all that up to positions year to year and keep it going. And on top of that, the fringe benefits that go with it, especially the very expensive healthcare number, which continues, it's putting this really big burden. So either we decide to postpone thinking about it, dealing with it, until we're forced to because we've got to be in balance somehow, we've got to cut, which means we've unintentionally, in effect, shaped the government, or we have become intentional about how we shape the government.
Yeah.
So I'll put that as one point on the table I think we've talked about before.
Thank you.
Raise hand. What do I do? Raise hand. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Let's see who we got. Doc.
Carl, I following through on your perspectives there. There's really a limited number of places where we can control it. We can wish for more revenue to come in somehow, and particularly that's a tough one. Clearly, the health department could do more, raise fees and all that, but I think we cannot get around dealing with the costs of our staff and the benefits package. And it feels to me like we make a decision about whether we pare back on those benefits or we are going to face cutting people loose. We're going to lose staff. We simply won't be able to afford it. And I think it's a tough one, but I would like to believe that it's more palatable to our staff, which we obviously depend on totally. It's more palatable to say, okay, the step increases will be smaller, the cost of livings will be smaller, but I still have a job, and all my fellow workers, employees will still have a job. I mean, I don't see a way around that, short of getting universal health care in Massachusetts. We are facing these big jumps in health insurance over the next few years. They're looking like they're going to get bigger. This report projects 12.25%. Where are we going to come up with the money? We're going to have to make some. So I think that's got to be on the table here.
Yeah, I agree. These are very tough decisions. You said 72%, I think, Delegate Price is the overall, but we've got some of our departments that are over 80.
Yes.
Those it's problematic. And it's something we should be working with the administration on too, as opposed to trying to, but that's why I'm glad to see Deputy Administrator Barrett here. Healthcare is one that you almost have to look at is the most serious thing. I know the steps are important, everything is important, but healthcare is an uncontrolled beast right now. We don't know. It's sub 12.5%. They were predicting 15% this year, and we got it to 8 by cutting some benefits, so not costs, but benefits that were allowed, and that got us from 15 to 8. That's wonderful. That was a brilliant move, I think. But that's just the start of it. And I know that I don't know if everyone was here, but there was a big article in Boston Globe stating, well, this salary and benefits package is bankrupting cities. It's a crisis in several cities in the Commonwealth, and it was in the Boston Globe this week. So we're in the same position. Thankfully, we don't have the same overhead of having a police force and fire departments and schools, but we're all heading in the same direction. So we have to be thoughtful and think about where we should at least open discussions with the administration and get this going right now. Let's see what we can come up with it as our most important thoughts. I think healthcare is the biggest. who have I got anybody? Oh, yes, I do. Delegate Killian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to just sort of echo the sentiments that have already been discussed. But John, you may recall several years ago we had the discussion about healthcare costs and the amount that the county contributes. Because again, we were in a similar situation back, I think, around 2015 or 2016. And I think one of the things we may have to consider is the shared costs. And right now, I think we're at a 25-75 split, and many municipalities have gone to a 50% split on the premiums. In my company, several years ago, I had to implement a policy where now we split the increase. So in other words, if the increase goes up a certain amount, it isn't a 75-25 split, it's a 50-50 split. And that, of course, affects the overall ratio. But it just gets to a point where it becomes too cumbersome. But I also give my employees the option of changing their plans or whatever they want to do to try and manage their own budgets. But certainly with that, it is such a large number. We definitely have to look at that. And I remember, John, when we looked at it before, we kind of were out of time. And when the time we were looking at it was when the budget was already been put together. And this is the time we're going to have to look at those policies now and determine ways of cutting. But there's certainly an opportunity at that point. And I agree with other sentiments about looking at the steps and raises that we're implementing every year.
We have amazing staff, but how long will that amazing staff be able to be paid in full? So yeah, I agree. I see Delegate Friesel.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add here that the purpose of today's discussion, which I saw as a way for us to start to sort of assemble an agenda from the Finance Committee side of things we think we need to touch upon now with the administration. All of this is to get a list of things that we need to talk about with the administration at a subsequent meeting as we start to think about those factors that lead to our structural long-term problems. Built into this, which we have to keep in mind, is not just the future of wages, benefits, and all of wages and benefits as a whole. That's not the only thing which is going to squeeze our budget. Maybe not so much in 28 or 29, but once we get to 30 and those other out years, we then have tremendous PFAS in capital expenses that are coming at us in that debt service number. And it's important, I believe, for us to have that brought into the discussion with the administration because it does involve their own policy of no more than 10% of the budget on debt service, which is going to be violated as we go forward, and also involves the extent to which we can take on more debt and not touch our many stabilization or reserve funds and how we deal with those reserve funds and handle all of those potential items. So that's, I think, another area we need to have some discussion.
Agreed. Delegate O'Malley.
Right, and I think Delegate Friesel has just touched on really what is the 800-pound gorilla looking at us, which is the capital we're going to need to borrow to do the job on the courts, and the money that we're putting out for PFAS, both. It seems to me this is a place where we really need to get our delegation lined up for getting the state to put some skin in this game and help to fund that stuff. We're the fact that what we face is borrowing a lot of money to do the courts and then hoping we can get, waiting for it to get paid back. We're on the hook in the meanwhile. I really think we need some state relief prospects here.
Mr. Dutton has mentioned that actually, that we really have to put some pressure on so that we can renegotiate the lease with the courts. Because basically right now, they don't pay us for maybe a year and a half, and that's been okay in the past. But now with these big renovations going on that are happening, it really is eating into our ability to pay all of our bills. And the hidden agenda there is that it says, I think, in our lease right now, well, if we don't want to pay you back, we won't. That's a pretty devastating option that has been in existence for my whole time here. And I just think that that's another place we could ask the state legislators to work on and saying, can you? And when we love the courts here, we're part and parcel of the court system, but you know, but we have to be guaranteed that we're going to get money back for all of these renovations and upgrades. So very well said. There was another part. Oh, Elliot Preisel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, another item I put on the table here is something which you mentioned. Again, when you look back at what the information that was given to us by the clerk, which was an excellent collection, but looking back at our report in 26 for FY26, FY27, what we were also concerned about is, quote, mission creep. And one of the things we might want to investigate and further discuss with the administration is where do we see some of that potentially occurring? Because that has an effect on the budget by crowding out some other priorities potentially. So that also adds to building up this structural deficit when we get that kind of mission creep in the budget, which we need to see whether there's some areas where that has occurred, and whether we need to fix that for the long term.
Yeah, Mr. Dutton had mentioned going back and looking at our core services. And I think that's another really good thing that we should put right on the table. And when we start discussing it with the administration in whatever formal means we can have, I think that's another thing that who decides what cuts we should make and what's on our core mission. I don't know if I have the stamina to figure that one out, but it's really an issue that has to be thought about.
Well, I think both of us do, right? Both the board
Well,
and the assembly.
we're on
have
the
to
same
decide
team.
that.
We're trying to get this county to be solid and stable. And and the other side of that coin, I think as time goes forward, I think the multiple counties become much more important to the towns because as they face all these deficits, we can possibly save them money. Like
Yep.
Dredge
Right.
is the perfect example of
Yes.
that. And distribution of all of vaccines. We do that for I think 14 towns. I could be incorrect with that. I think it's 14 towns. I mean, we do things that other counties just can't do, and I'm very proud of the fact we do that. But if we can't afford it, I think everybody's the lesser. Every citizen of Cape Cod's the lesser if we haven't got the financial stamina to keep this going. So, thank you for that. It said in our summary, the same right after mission creep. I think there's something that basically says about taxes and fees. We have a 2.5% annual growth cap on county taxes and assessments. We have a 5% annual health and environment fee increase, and we have a 2.5% annual growth in IT services. I think that seems to me a pretty fair thing. Is there anywhere else we can expand that, like the dredge? That's another one that it seems to have. There's a butting of the heads that the towns can't afford it, and I have not. I know that Delegate Hart is online here, but the towns are saying they can't afford it. The other answer is if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And at what cost and at what availability? So I mean that's something else that I think is another one, another thing that we could think about too. So. I wrote that down as part of it too. So is there any other thought process on the revenue side that we can think about? And I see Delia Frizel, please.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I think that there are two studies that are being funded this fiscal year that we should keep our mind on as we go down this process of putting together this agenda with the administration.
Yeah.
One of them is the rate study, which affects revenue. And the other one is there's a compensation study, which affects our future wage, benefit, et cetera. So those two components, I think, need to be kept in mind as we go forward with this process.
Yeah, those both, yeah. Okay, that's good. Uh, Delegate Price, sorry, Delegate O'Malley, please.
Right. And on the revenue side, one of the things that struck me in this this little white paper, which by the way, thank you so much, Clerk Fletcher. It's really a very useful synopsis of what we face. One of the things that really caught me was under investment income on top of page 2. Um, Projections assume a conservative 3.25% yield on 25 million investment balance. You know, with 25 million bucks invested, we ought to be getting better than I get better than that on my lousy CDs. That feels too low, and finding a way to be more active with that is strikes me as there's real money.
Yeah, no, I got to disagree with you. I think that, you know, you're talking about apples to oranges too. When you get to this, what the county can do and the state mandated reservations about what you can do with that money are a different thing than yours or my CDs. You know, I know I'm getting some money right now, but it's only for 6 months. So I mean, I really trust the treasurer, you know, in this. I think that they've really upped their game over the last few years to the AAA team, including getting a better bond rating too. I think that
Yeah.
you could ask those questions, but I think you'd get some pretty solid answers as to why it's at 3.25 or whatever it's going to be. Because
Okay, it's
it is
surely.
downward pressure.
I understand there's a lot of elements here in this kind of government borrowing that may be different than what I face. It just strikes me as wow, that's a low return on a big chunk of money.
I think she has something like, I don't know, dozens of accounts too. It's not all in one place, and I think they face regulations that we don't have to in our private lives,
Okay, right, all right.
in our business lives. I think next is, oh, I thought I saw somebody else, not Delegate Frizel. Sure,
I
saw
just
somebody
want
else.
to add to that investment return discussion. Well, I think it's appropriate for us, because everything's on the table in a way, right? For us to talk about. That's a projection. She's deliberately being conservative about that. I think if you look at what we actually are getting, I think we are currently getting better than that. But I
Oh,
think
good.
going forward, she's kind of being conservative because we
Okay.
know how hard it is to project investment yields. Yeah.
Sure.
And there
Sure.
are
Okay.
constraints that she faces that you and I don't face.
Yep. So that's well
Let's
said.
find out about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's something, everything should be on the table.
Yeah.
Delegate Killian, please.
So I think we all agree where the problems lie. I think the only question is how you want to break this up and begin to attack the problem. I mean, there's obviously a number of ways we can approach it, but do you want to come up with an agenda on discussing some of these possibilities, whether it's, you know, paring back some of the services we provide, or whether it's healthcare or other salary type of reductions. But I mean, the reality is we're looking at what, a 1.2 million deficit for fiscal 28. I think we have to think in the very short term how we approach that, but obviously the years out they get significant. So, what is the suggestion? We begin looking at pieces of this, or do you want to carve this up into a lot of different pieces to the different
I,
people that are here?
I think we can come up with an agenda. I noticed that Administrator Dutton is online. Would you kindly join the conversation? Has the administration come up with some of the same thoughts, and maybe the same sort of agenda items that we're facing going into even FY28?
So one of the benefits of joining late, or maybe the detriments, is that I don't, yeah, maybe I'll just say yes.
No.
No,
No.
just broadly, I think any discussion on our, county expenditures and the services we offer, I think is healthy, no matter what the context is. So I would welcome those conversations, certainly.
Well, we were talking about the fact that even in a larger sense, and you've been a longer term administrator, municipal administrator too. One of the things is now towns are facing closing fire departments down and closing. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in every the thread that runs so true through that all is salaries and benefits. You know, that's why they can't afford it anymore. And flat revenue. So we are flat revenue, and we have when we have issues with as I think it was 72% was what Carol said, right? The county the fringe salary and fringe was up to 72% of our things, and it's not going down. So we're
No.
looking for creative ideas on how to potentially raise revenue, get back to our core principles, and deal with the big trifecta of salary, fringes, health benefits, step raises, colas. You know, I mean, I love our staff. I mean, there's nothing to do with that. I'm just thinking about the long-term viability of Barnstable County because of that.
And no, I think you're exactly right. And the commissioners have made note of the work that we need to do along those lines. One, look at our revenues. We're a little different than, well, we're a lot different than the towns in terms of
Yeah.
revenue. The towns rely, between, on the Cape, rely between 80 and 90%, I would guesstimate, on real estate tax. So real estate tax is a very stable, form of revenue, and it increases 2.5% every year. So you're almost guaranteed 2.5% revenue increases year to year to year, overall. On the county side, the vast majority of our revenues comes from the registry of deeds. So we're not guaranteed that houses or commercial properties will sell on the Cape. So we have the potential, and it makes up, something in the neighborhood of, 70% of our revenues, somewhere in that
I
realm.
know.
So we're not guaranteed that any house will sell or any property will sell on the Cape. So in theory, if we hit a depression, our 70% of our revenues could simply dry up and go away. Is that going to happen? Highly unlikely. The flip side is that, we have seen, certainly over the last number of years, we've seen substantially higher revenues than 2.5%. We've seen significant growth. And that's partially because the home sales have escalated, the price of homes has escalated so much. And the turnover, the number of sales has either increased or remained stable. So we've been the beneficiary of that. So I think, we have a different context within which to discuss revenues. And it's extremely difficult right now, especially to sort of calculate or estimate, next year's revenue, because we don't know what it all depends on the housing market, really. And we don't have a good grasp, and it's almost impossible in this, sort of scenario, to have a good grasp of where housing sales are going to go. Is it feasible that we'll continue to see escalation in prices? If you look at Nantucket and you look at the Vineyard, as sort of, the canary in the coal mine, absolutely. You can look at the Cape and you can see rapidly escalating prices for the foreseeable future. We're not exactly the same as the Vineyard in Nantucket. So you have to sort of hedge a little bit on the notion that we're going to see rapidly escalating prices. Even if we did see rapidly escalating prices, is the volume going to continue, or is the volume going to start to drop? These are all sort of almost unanswerable questions. Carol does an exceptional job of trying to seek out professionals in the field so that she can calculate revenue estimates with some kind of assurance. It's certainly not certainty, but with some kind of assurance. So my point being that we've got radically different revenue streams. I think that is a challenge for us. It's always a challenge. It's going to be a challenge every year. But one of the reasons we have such a large amount of money in a revenue contingency fund is exactly because our revenues have the potential to fluctuate pretty dramatically. On the expense side, I agree. We should always be doing an analysis about what are our core functions. How do we gradually pull away from our non-core functions if we find that there are non-core functions, and then also how do we look to try to either boost revenue or be able to generate revenue for the services we offer. Something akin to the shared regional housing program model. And I think right now that's where I'm looking to the extent that we're gonna create programs where we can't create programs that are going to be funded by our current revenue stream. We have to create programs that have the potential for towns to buy into those services. Whether I've talked about procurement, I've talked about inspectional services. Those are all programs that I've heard other town administrators and town managers talk about desperately needing, and something that the county could potentially provide, but it can only provide those if we can develop a stream of revenue enough to
a cost
cover
sharing,
those
so
costs.
that it saves them, and by buying in, that we can make it happen for them too. We talked a little bit just before we came on about the rate study. Now, I'm grateful that we put that in the budget through whatever means we could. But is that liable to be a long study, or is that something that we could put into some effect this fiscal year?
I'm hoping. Oh yeah, I'm hoping that we've I believe that we've contracted or about to contract or selected a vendor. And my recollection is my last conversation with Carol about this is that it should only take a couple of months to get it done. So, excuse me, that will help us not only set rates for the services we offer, it'll also identify what it actually costs us to offer to provide services right across the county. The other benefit, the biggest benefit, I think, is being able to establish essentially federal overhead, so that we can make sure that we're negotiating with federal agencies on overhead expense, so that we can charge for appropriate overhead. So,
Wow.
so it's got
That's a three-pronged attack. I
It
like
is,
that.
and it's all very much needed, and I think will long-term benefit the county, short-term benefit the county.
You have a time to answer some questions? I see that some of the delegates have questions for, I'm sure, for you, not for me. Delegate Frizzell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, trying to lead into where Delegate Killian last comment, which is, okay, how do we get started on this, right? And so how do we start sort of putting together an agenda to sit down and have a discussion with the administration, and what do we talk about in that discussion? So I'm going to first ask a question here, and then I'm going to make at least a suggestion for us to kick around. So the other thing, Mr. Dutton, is I believe, have a comp study that's supposed to be undertaken this year. Am I right about that? Okay.
That's correct.
Can you give us a little better idea of what that's going to entail, both as to substance and as to timing of that report?
Substance, so a compensation study, classification compensation study essentially takes your current workforce, analyzes the jobs that they are doing, and then classifies them in a what typical, if you've been used to town government, it classifies those positions on a grade scale. So whatever you choose, the matrix or the number of grades, but it classifies those into grades. And then so that's the classification piece. So the job is analyzed for, the authority that it has, the responsibilities, the potential risk for liability and so forth, and then classifies, puts it into different grades, sorts them into different grades. That's the classification piece. The compensation piece essentially takes similar jobs or the same job, if the same job exists, in a host of other communities, and looks at what other communities are paying for that same that same job, the same job. And so, and then compiles generally sort of an average range. And then that average range is translated into steps within the grade of the on the matrix. So essentially, classifies the position, then looks to see what that position is paid, and then translates that into a step schedule on the grade matrix.
When do you anticipate you'll get the results of that study?
So the fortunate thing is that a good chunk of the classification work is done. We haven't made huge changes in specific job responsibilities. There have been some, but not major. So there's not a whole lot of work to do on the classification side. And so really it's the consultant going out and getting the pay scales for different positions in whatever assortment. Usually on a typical compensation and classification survey, you pick 12 to 15 towns or similar county in our case. Obviously, there aren't a whole lot of counties in Massachusetts that we can compare ourselves to. So generally, it's more related to towns.
Mhm.
And to answer your question about timing, I don't know. I can certainly ask Justina what she contemplates for timing, but usually it takes several months.
But my reason for timing is that something which you think you're going to try to implement as you build the FY28 budget? Because I believe that process begins in September with department directors starting to put together, under your direction and your guidance and guidelines, what the FY28 budget would look like. Is that right?
Right. That's correct. So yes, I'd like to build that into our FY28 budget. Generally, what we do, and it makes the internal budgeting process a little bit easier, is that the finance department will calculate salaries for the following fiscal year, and then based on some management direction from the commissioners and me, and then and so they provide the departments the staffing budget, essentially the staffing budget, and assuming that it's going to remain static. I mean that's what you've got this year is what you're going to have next year. If there are changes, obviously Carol and her group will work with the department head to adjust the staffing budgets accordingly. But the staffing piece of the budgets originates now from finance, which makes much more sense.
So just as leading up to what we might take as a first agenda item, and then I'll leave it at that. Maybe what we begin with is a discussion with the administration about our current structure where we have these wages, steps, merit pay increase, COLA increase, and other fringe benefits. And then in that fringe benefit category, the way in which we share health insurance, which is the biggest driver of benefits, as a discussion topic as we try to put together something for the FY28.
I have something to ask, but I'm going to go with Delegate Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think we should all keep in mind that probably very likely that these compensation studies are going to tell us that we're not paying enough, and they're going to be looking to increase salaries significantly. I know the last time we had one, that's exactly what happened. So I think we be careful what we wish for. Administrator Dutton, just a question, because we've had these discussions in years prior. How would we go about making these changes? What would that process look like if we wanted to make changes in the step schedules or any type of COLA raises or the shared costs for health insurance? What would that change process look like?
That's a great question. So I think it depends on this, which one or which groupings of those things that you mentioned you wanted to make changes to. Most of that the budget originates with me and finance. We develop it. Vera, spearheads that process internally, and then it's presented to the commissioner. So the commissioner, it's really the commissioner's budget that ends up getting sent to the assembly. On occasion, the commissioners will make changes to the budget that we recommend, but generally, we work sort of through the process before they send it up to the assembly, so that when they finally get the budget that we give them, their input for the most part has already been input into the budget. So it depends what area. So if you're talking about making changes to the step schedule, making recommendations to the commissioners about regrading, for instance, making recommendations to the commissioners about limiting the growth in the steps. So as I mentioned, it's a matrix with grades. And then generally 1 through 8 or 1 through 10 or 1 through 12, depends on the municipality, steps. There may be, some communities have 2% differences in between each step. Some communities have more. I think we're at 3%, if I'm not mistaken. You may recommend to the commissioners to scale that back. Keep in mind that community or collective bargaining agreements control, steps. So it's hard. You can't make, changes on an annual basis there, but you can certainly make recommendations to the commissioners that they, the next time that union contract comes up for negotiation, that, you adopt a step schedule that is different. So that's making recommendations to the commissioners. Health insurance is or benefits, but generally benefits are driven by health insurance. We're 75-25 split, so the county pays 75%, the employee pays 25% of that. If you were to recommend a change in that, that would also go to the commissioners, and they would, take action on that. Again, it wouldn't be, if you did that on an annual basis for the non-union employees, that's one thing. The union employees are a slightly different animal, different process, negotiating process there. The retirees currently get, I believe, the same 75-25 split in benefits. If you were to propose making a change there, that would also originate with the commissioners and then ultimately come back to the assembly. All of these would ultimately come back to the assembly because you would propose it to the commissioners, who would translate it into if they agree, translate it into a proposed ordinance, and then vote it, and then send it up to the assembly for further action. So most of those changes would require ordinance. Some may only require a change in policy, which would be, personnel policy, which would be a commissioner's, the commissioner's vote, not necessarily an ordinance. But I'm just trying to think of something off the top of my head that would be a commissioner's policy, an employee policy versus, but nothing pops up in my head, but that's a possibility for some of the things you mentioned.
Well, I thank you for that. I think that's where we ran into issues before was with the bargaining agreements. And I think we'd have to try and get on a schedule to understand when when we could implement that. Because if we're looking at, the long range deficits going out several years, how long will it take to implement some of these changes if we have to deal with agreements that may not come up for renegotiation for 2 years or something? We have to get those facts in front of us to know what's possible before we can really start suggesting anything. Because if we're going to start addressing the immediate deficits, we've got to do that right away, and we have to know what's on the table and what isn't. So I think it's probably help us to know the number of employees that have agreements that are due within the next 12 months, and then there on out, how many are non-union that we can, work with immediately. I think that's all important information to have at our fingertips.
Agreed.
Thank you. You've actually asked almost all the questions that I had, Delegate Killian. But can you update me? What is our percentage of union contracts to non-union contracts as far as employees of the Barnstable County? I know we have several unions too.
We actually have two separate bargaining units, and one covers basically facilities employees, and the other covers registry of deeds employees. So
Really?
just those two. I'm not sure of the actual number of employees under each of them, but it's not the majority of employees in the county, put it that way.
And they have different schedules to redo their bargaining agreements, right? Each union probably has a different.
I know they're 3-year agreements. I can't recall if they're on the same cycle or if there's a
Calendar, yeah.
1-year difference. I'd have to look at that, double check.
Counties have done a lot of work on they're almost antiquated because you get retirement benefits when you work for the county. Any new hires do we have? Do they automatically go into retirement, or have you changed that policy for new hires?
Actually, most retirement is governed by state law. So, in a government entity, such as the county, it's similar to the town. Every public employee is, well, not every, but most employees covered by Barnstable County retirement system are required to become members in that. So if we hire a new full-time person, that person is required to be a member of Barnstable County Retirement. So they right now contribute 9 plus 2, so 11% of their gross to the retirement system, and they can vest in the retirement system 10 years. Once they've got 10 years into the system, so to speak. Once they've got 10 years of government service under their belt, then they become vested in the system, which essentially means that you can be covered by retiree health insurance after 10 years, and then if you retired after 10 years, you get a small, very, very small pension. So I guess, yeah, so every employee, I mean, I hedge that because teachers aren't necessarily covered. They've got their own state retirement system. But general government employees are all covered by the Barnstable County retirement system.
Thank you. Just one last question that has cropped up as we're having this great discussion. You were planning on up to a 15% increase in healthcare, and because you got rid of a benefit that was, to me, was magnificent thought process that went down to 8%. So was that covered under personnel policy changes? Simply that.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. That is a great question because that caused a lot of confusion in municipalities across the state about actual coverage and who was eligible for those that particular line of prescription drugs and who wasn't. I believe, obviously, it was health, the system's decision. So the health, what is Vera, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, remind me of the health system, the Cape Cod
The
Municipal
municipal
Health
health
Group.
group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group actually sought legal advice on whose decision is it? Is it the individual towns to cut those that drug coverage, or is it up to the group? Evidently, it's up to the group, because the group made the decision to not to cut coverage for those weight loss drugs. And hence, what could have been a 15 or 20% increase ended up only being an 8% increase. So,
Yeah, only 8. Isn't that funny to say it that way?
yeah.
So regarding that too, I know that there's different health plans within the municipal health group. And I know some are less expensive than others, and some are just grandfathered in, it seems. Like, I think there's, what is it? What's the most expensive one? Is it
I think there's probably a Blue Cross
Blue
product,
Cross?
a
Yeah.
PPO
A
product that
PPO
is
rather
the
than
most,
HMO, right? Now, is that grandfathered in, or is that something that could be discussed in the personnel policy changes?
That is a good question, and I'm not sure. Vera would know better than I
Vera,
would.
please.
I think the cost associated with the healthcare coverage turns more on the scale of the plan you get, individual versus family, than it does between the individual products, Harvard Pilgrim or Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's
Okay.
it's when we budget, we have to budget for the most expensive iteration of that plan in the event that we hire someone that wants to have a family coverage. So it's much more about that than it is about the individual products.
Okay. Yeah, I know that it's very good thought process to that too. I think that plan for the worst and then reap the benefits. Should it be beneficial to the county? I agree. So what we're doing, and I know that you and your staff are tremendously busy, but I'd like to know if we can just have an ongoing dialogue, or even have a formal meeting on a specific time schedule, like once a month or something like that, just had to discuss this, because I think we're all should be on the same page. We want Barnstable County to be a healthy regional government that goes into the future helping the citizens of Cape Cod. I mean, that's as simple as I can make it. But we want to be healthy. We want to, and we have, before you got here, we were talking about PFAS and having the state legislature get involved. I mean, why do we have this albatross around our neck, and some town north of Boston has it too? There's got to be a way to spread the pain of this, and frankly, make us more durable going forward, make them financially durable going forward. So that's just one other thing that I think that we can all do that. I know Commissioner Forrest has a deep relationship in government, going up to the federal government too. So I mean, there must be a way we can somehow lobby to get PFAS relief going forward, just for the benefit of everybody. It's the big gorilla in the room.
It is, and if I can, I will say that we have a PFAS issue at our former fire training facility. The military has a PFAS issue on Joint Base Cape Cod, and with an enormous plume. We have spent a lot for Barnstable County. We've spent a lot of money mitigating our plume on the coming off the fire training facility, researching, studying it, and then mitigating, at least an initial mitigation of that plume. The military has spent, I think, probably exponentially more money on their plume. So it's an issue that affects the entire Cape. And I will say that I don't think for our plume or our issues on the entire Cape, I don't know that the state legislature is going to be of tremendous help, because they, quite frankly, don't have enough money. And so my hope is that we can leverage our federal delegation, and go to them with a comprehensive proposal to do additional mitigation and be able to compensate the water systems on the Cape that have had to install and then continue to maintain PFAS filtration systems. So my hope is we do a lot of interaction with the federal government on this, and a lot of interaction with the towns, fire departments, off Cape users of the fire training facility. There are a lot of partners and a lot of people that need to join us in trying to encourage federal funding for sort of a broader cleanup.
Thank you for that. That's all my question. But the last question is: do you think we can, through your administration and Owen, we can come up with a planned meeting schedule to talk about these issues that's going on as partners in the health benefit of Barnstable County?
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I know you guys meet every week anyway, but that would be great to put that on the agenda so that we as a finance committee will report to the assembly. But we would like to have, as a finance committee, have ongoing discussions about how we can make this work, and God forbid more revenue. With that rate study. The rate study excites me. The compensation study scares me. But unless the compensation study says, well, you know what, you don't really need that person. There's other ways to get that job done. That might be painful, but that might be a financial relief if that rate study goes that way. I mean, not the rate study, the compensation study goes that way. So I really appreciate your time. I see one more question if you have time. I know your time is valuable, but Delegate Frizzell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't really have a question so much as just to point out, I don't think we need to be frightened by the comp study. It will be more information to help us in how we decide we want to structure the workforce of the county. I mean, if there are certain people who are working and their pay scale to be competitive, that has to go up. It doesn't mean everybody's goes up. It may mean that, well, we have limitations. We cannot be everything to everybody. We do not have unlimited funds. So we have to work with constraints. And so it just is more information to help us in how we shape our workforce within those constraints.
Well said. If there are no other questions, you're welcome to stay with us, but I know that that your day has already been long, so all right.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, and I will get together with you on your email. I just saw it today, so
No,
I'd be happy to do that.
All right, I'll reach out. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. What's the next level of this discussion? Do you want to come up with some key structural plans to discuss? And then, or do you want to go through Owen and do that as the week goes on? Would you like to come up with some like 5, 4, 6 key issues that we should be discussing? I'm open to the board. I see Delegate Frizzell.
I'll just try to at least get the conversation on that rolling. So I think it's a good idea, as you suggested, that Owen and the administrator try to come up with some dates and times for us to continue the discussion. Obviously not going to be something we do every week. And I think at least the first meeting might want to focus in more detail on if we have what kind of flexibility we have realistically in the design of our compensation package that entails these benefits at this level and salary increases with steps and merit bonuses plus COLA, and get our arms around where there might be some way in which we deal with that as we move forward to the next fiscal year.
Good. Thank you. I saw another hand up. I think, Delegate O'Malley.
Yeah, and I think I think Delegate Trezell has already kind of pretty well expressed what I was going to say, which I think simply is that even here in this conversation, we recognize that the number of real opportunities that we need to talk about, where we need to make some decisions, is relatively limited. There's so many elements in this that we cannot project, that we don't have a blessed thing we can do about them. But I think focusing on, particularly focusing on the compensation, the health insurance components, is going to be real, at least at this point, until we get the compensation study. That will generate another set of discussions. But we can kick that can down the road until that comes along. I think we've got some issues right now that we should dive into and bring together, the necessary people, Carol and the benefits people, and start trying to make some recommendations.
Well, I was very encouraged that they said the rate study might only take a couple of months. That's fantastic if that's true, because that will really help us going forward in time to make a difference if there's such a thing. Administrator Barrick.
Hello,
Eric.
nice to see you all again. Just for context, I just wanted to mention that sort of just using our open finance tool on our county website, in fiscal 26 budgeted payroll is 16.28 million. Right. So if you move, if you want to, there's only so much effect of bending the curve on that by sort of trying to, shave percentages here and there. So 1% of that is 162,800, call it 163,000. Right. Mm-hmm. So we've already, in fiscal 27, we already recommended that COLA will only be 2% instead of 3%. So we're already working on that. You want to take percentages out of the spaces between the steps. Maybe you want to take another percent out of that. Again, $163,000. So, right there, you're only at $325,000 a year. Yeah. So, it's every little bit counts. But just, from a proportionate point of view, keep our eyes on where you want to expend the most political capital. I would suggest the most practical capital, and that's going to have to do with sort of what the county does. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's less about that. That's almost like tinkering on the margins.
No,
with the compensation related stuff, obviously it's important, but the larger proportionate expenditure and the questioning of that is to the various things the county does right now, and and think about them perhaps in a modular fashion. What do you want to take some things away? Are you ready for that political backlash? That's the question. Those are the policy questions we need answered.
Yeah. Well, if we don't do something,
thank you.
If we don't do something, as your treasurer said to us, we're going to be underwater in FY28 and forward. So, we can not do anything, and because it's painful, and then go bankrupt. Again, I don't know if you were here. I've been reading this Globe article about these different cities in Boston that are firing entire fire districts, getting rid of them. Vacating if there's a project, a job that hasn't been filled, they just get rid of it. There's no job there anymore, so you can't hire anybody. No, I mean it's emergency management in big cities in Massachusetts. Yeah. It was really an eye-opening thing that it was a very well-written article, and it was just something that at least we don't have fire departments, we don't have police departments in schools, but it's the same thing. It's your revenues are flat and your expenses are blooming, with no end in sight. And the other side of this, we have a great staff, and they deserve to live here with dignity.
Yeah.
But something's got to happen. There's got so what you really sense. One of the things we started with was the core services the county needs to do. Maybe there's something we can't afford to do anymore. You know, I don't know. That's a discussion that should be open-ended. It should be both with the assembly and the administration saying, is there something? Maybe this compensation study will tell us something, that says, other cities aren't doing, other administrations aren't doing this anymore because it's not, the benefit is not there. I don't know what those would be, but it's a discussion we could have. I just don't want to go bankrupt in my lifetime here. We just have too great of an organization, and the people are the organization on the county scene. Right? So I just don't want it to go away because we can't afford it anymore. And I was there. I was there. Just been elected when the county hospital closed, and there were layoffs and firings everywhere at the county. And we had another setback, I think, in 2008 too. So I mean, it's not a once in a lifetime thing. I think it's something we have to really come to grips with one way or the other. Doing nothing is not an option. So thank you. If you would mind, I see Delegate Frizel, then Delegate Killian have more thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just following up on that Globe article because I read that article, and it really, in a way, answers something which Delegate O'Malley raised very early in our meeting, which is, gee, I hope employees would consider taking a little less so that everybody can still have a job. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. One of the problems these municipalities are running into is they had to sign on to greater increases. And at the time, they said, you can get more money here, but not everybody's going to be here anymore. And the unions have said, I don't care. We want the more money. And so what's happening now is those people are being cut. And if you don't design the plan in a way to shape it the way you want, you're gonna sort of accidentally, unintentionally end up with a shape you just accidentally ran into. It wasn't intentional.
Amen. Delegate Killian.
I think just to expand upon that, I think we're the ones who aren't going to kick the can down the road, which has happened so many times in government that we see it. The other thing we haven't discussed here, which has come up in the past, is departments or services. We've spoken at length about Children's Cove and about getting funding from another source or push that over towards the prosecutor's office. So there are a lot of opportunities that we can look at. It's just a question of sorting through them and coming up with a plan. And again, I fall back on my experience, and John, you too, is we really have to move with some haste, or we're going to end up in a situation where we're told, oh, well, it's too late to do that now. We have to wait until next year. So I think it's important that we consider some deadlines of when we want to put some proposals before the commissioners in the administration that we have come up with, and obviously in conjunction with them, to say, hey, this is when we want to put this forward. We don't want to just have meeting after meeting without any real plan about when we should submit something. Delegate Frizel mentioned about not meeting every week, but I think we should consider every other week that we should plan on getting together and having discussions, whether they're just updates from the administration or from our clerk. But I definitely think we have to keep moving the ball forward if we have any hopes of getting any real concrete changes by the fall.
Well said. Further discussion. Delegate Frizel.
Oh, in following up on Delegate Killian, maybe the start here is for the clerk to discuss with administration potential schedule and see how that works out, and see if we can put something together. We could start with a biweekly and see how that schedule looks.
Okay, and limit it too. Let's.
Oh yeah.
Everyone has specific time to do these things. So yeah. So if we can be focused and do that, let's have a well-respected clerk get on that. All right. Very good. Any other further discussion? We've gone just past an hour and 10 minutes, so I like to keep these meetings tight. And I think we've had a great discussion and we've had great input from the administration, and I'm grateful for that too. But I think we're all on the same page. We know we have to do something, you know? So let's get some priorities together and do that from the revenue side and the expense side, both. And I'm grateful that rate study is going to be maybe as little as a 2-month conclusion. I think that's really interesting because that's mostly in the revenue side. But you know, maybe it'll say that it's not worth doing because you can get enough revenue for it. You know, the revenue doesn't match the expense. We'll see. But I'm looking forward to that, and I'm grateful that quick of a turnaround. Okay. If there is no further discussion, seeing none, I'll call for adjournment. Do I have anybody?
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Kelly. Seconded. Yep. And Mr. Clerk, formally a roll call, please.
We're not Mr. Chair, point of order. We're
Yeah.
not doing that in the general court anymore, in the General
Oh.
Assembly. So
I can
do we need to- do we
declare
need-
it over.
I think you can
Well,
declare it.
The way this works is if you've covered everything on the calendar and no one else wishes to be recognized, the chair of a meeting under Robert's rules can adjourn the meeting. As long as no one else is requesting additional business and you've covered what's on the agenda.
That
you don't need a
falls under
motion to
old
adjourn.
dog, new tricks. Okay, I'll call for adjournment. Take care. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your
Thank you.
valuable time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Yep.